Julie's first jet was so secret, the crews didn't know that.
Like Back to the Future. They sent our bombers all the way into Europe, so that high mortality rate that you talked about, Russell, in large part was the Germans figured that out really quick. So their fighters were just that happened, and there you see the P-51 did say paper mache. They initially made the drop tanks for the extra fuel on the P-51 out of paper mache. When the aircraft got those additional legs, we began to get air superiority.
So a lot of the aircraft didn't make it on the way back because dive bombers that were available at the beginning of World War II were pretty antiquated. So we had an updated version, and that was the SB-2C. So what they would do is they'd fly around at about 14, 15,000 right there underneath the wings, which would black out or start to gray out. The Me-262, first operational jet in the European field. Rob asked the Me-262 comes with that. The P-51 did not catch the jet, so it would go about
20. This represents Russell. Built. That is American horsepower, American firepower on V-12, and then we talked about the fuel tanks. That is why that airplane won the war, got the lunar war in Europe.
And do you know who the largest operator of P-39s and P-63 were, Rob? So we used that in the Lend-Lease program, and we gave it to the Russians. And the Russians used the majority of P-39s. They loved the aircraft and said, hey, let's make a new one. That's where the P-63 came in because they wanted to put a bigger armament on it. Again, it's a very unique design because the engine actually sits behind it. The Spurry ball turret. That was also.
Gentlemen, you see it high and to the left, the dark aircraft with the two aircraft. He's diving in now, just like they did in the skies over Europe, with the attack profile on the P-51 and the B-17. Watch down from left to right.
62 again, 4:30.
In this aircraft, they look like they're really nice and straight and they're painted really pretty. In the actuality, what really happened, ladies and gentlemen, is out in the field where the aircraft are made all dropped.
Navy's code, and we knew they were going to attack an island, but we didn't know which one. And so we had to come up with a plan to figure out how to do it. He's intercepted that message, and they started talking about how they needed water purification systems.
Spotted a Japanese destroyer headed northeastbound down the water. And he realized that aircraft and he needed to get back to the fleet. He thought he's going to be pointed right at where they are, Russell. And so he took his flight, matched that heading, and put his hard as he could. Group weapons pilot, Team 1, the U.S. Air Force Harvey received the Congressional Gold Medal in 2006. Harvey bit about this big silver airplane approaching from the left.
That is a B-29. This is an example of the aircraft that dropped the atomic bomb that ended the war in the Pacific. This aircraft is a 4-engine bomber. It has 4 R-3350 huge radial engines.
They were needed to get into action. Now the B-29 that we see in front of us, that we affectionately know as Doc, it's one of 2 flying examples of this aircraft, I believe, right, Russell?
That's right, the other one being Fifi. And I'll tell you some really interesting technology. The aircraft, they had the same thing in the B-29, and they took the gunners out. You had a couple of gunners, but a computer with less computing power that you have in your pocket right now.